Welcome back to the series on comparing visual scripting with C#. This is to give beginners an idea on whether to go with visual scripting or C# if they are completely new to Unity. And I will be creating a few simple games using both methods and comparing them side by side so that you can make a better decision. So we are going to today just get pedals in for a simple game of Pong, moving them up and down independently. Player 1 will be moving up and down with our WS keys, and player 2 with our arrow keys, the up and down arrow. Okay, let's get started. Create a new project. I'm going into assets, scenes, and I want to create a new scene for visual scripting. And I will create a separate one for C#. It will help me manage things easier. So visual scripting scene. Open that up. And make sure my scene camera is aligned properly. So I always want the X red on the right, Y green up. So that's X positive on the right, Y positive up. Right click on your hierarchy, 3D object, cube. We are going to create a pedal. Let's call this player 1. And with that selected, add component, search for script you want, script machine, new. Right click, new folder. I'm going to call this vscripts, short for visual scripts. And I'm going to call this move pedal. Okay, edit graph. If you have just created your project and you hit edit graph for the first time, it's going to take some time to initialize your visual scripting. So I've done that already earlier. So that was instantaneous. Okay, I don't need start. I deleted that. I need update and input. So in our last lesson we did input. And let's just think about this a bit. So we need to do this a bit differently since we have two players we need to control. Player 1 we will control with W and S. Player 2 we'll use the up and down arrow. Okay, so this is not going to be a network game. We are far away from getting into networking and making multiplayer games that way. So let's see, click on your output node, click on if, or search for if in your fuzzy finder. And what we need to know is if this is player 1 or player 2. And an easy way to do that is just to create an object variable. So if you create an object variable, this can be shared between two different objects with the same script. And I'm going to call this is player 1, and we are going to make this of type Boolean. We haven't discussed Boolean yet. We discussed string, integer, and float so far. Boolean is just a true or false. Okay, simple. And see here the value we can give it. We can either tick it or untick it. So that's a true or false, on or off, however you want to say it. In the visual scripting editor, it sees it as true or false. Okay. So grab that and drag it into your script, and we are going to connect the output of this. And this is going to tell us whether that's true or false. Connect it there. If it's true, we are going to do one thing. If it's false, we are going to do another thing. And that is, if it's true, we will move pedal 1 up and down if W and S are pressed. We are going to use input.get access again. Now, what we need to do is enable our input manager to handle two players. So hit edit, project settings, expand this and look for input manager. With that selected, I think axes will be collapsed. Just expand it and look for vertical. I'm just going to delete vertical too. I was busy testing earlier. Okay, so vertical. will have down and up. What you want to do is remove down and up, which refers to your down and up arrows. So we are only interested in using S and W for moving up and down for our vertical axis, and we will get back to this input manager in a bit when we are dealing with player 2. So with true, if it's player 1, click on the true output node and search for input.getAxis, just as we did in the last lesson. We are searching for vertical. Remember, that is case sensitive and you have to have your spelling 100% correct. And drag your output node, we need to translate. So we want to translate up and down. Select XYZ1 and we want a move speed. So here we're going to create a variable for move speed. So come back to object variables on your left. Enter move speed, and we are going to make this a float value. We want precision on this and make that 0.3. Let's make it 0.3 and drag that in. So before we use move speed, I'm going to remove that again. I'm just going to connect this output on my get input get access directly to Y. Save it and just do a quick test. Okay, there's our cube. Let's expand it a bit. That is way too small. Let's make this 3 by 3 by 3. Actually, on Z we want to flatten it out, so let me make Z 0.1. Okay, press play. And we can move up and down. Okay, W and S. I'm using my arrow keys and that's not working. Because I have not set this to player 1. So with our player 1 selected, you will see our variables are exposed and we want to make this player 1. We're not doing anything for player 2 yet, that's why nothing is happening. So W and S. And that is way too sensitive, and that's why we need to set a move speed variable. And that is 0.3. That's our default value. If you set it in here, in our script graph. And how do we work with this? So our input.getAxis is going to give us a value of 1. Okay, it will accelerate quickly up to 1. So we'll just say either 0 or 1, just to make things simple for ourselves. Object, let's grab move speed and drag it in, and we need to multiply this value with our move speed. So with let's drag from vertical, click in the middle and search for multiply. Multiply. Choose the first one, math generic. And this will now multiply our output value of input.getAxis, which will be 1, by whatever our move speed is. And this is, we are essentially decreasing the value of what's given to us from our input.getAxis, because we want to slow it down in this case. And that will multiply it, and we can set it to the y-axis. So I want you to notice there was a bit of a ambition, not hectically so in this example, but you had to deselect the nodes and reconnect them, and just keep that in mind, because you will see in C# that is going to be a lot easier. Okay, so moving W and S up and down, that's a lot easier. If I select my player, let's make that 0.1. That is much easier to control. I'm going to leave it at that for now. Stop that. Player selected again, you'll see it reset our move speed to 0.3, make that 0.1. And with our camera selected, okay, we want our pedal to be more to the left, so just adjust that. Select our camera again, it's now not even in view. Still can't see it over here. Got a trial and error here. Okay, just slightly to the left now, in camera, and save that, and that looks good. I'm going to resize this. Let's leave Y at 3 and make X 1. Let's see how this looks. Okay, that looks like a good pedal for our Pong game. Good, now let's do the player 2 bit. I'm going to select player 1 and Control D, duplicate, and move that to the right. Just line it up while we're at it. It's not visible here, let's move it more to the left. Okay, to the right. More to the right. Okay, and rename this to player 2. 2, not player 12. Save. Now on player 2 we have our move pedal script, and I want you to note something very important here is that player 1 and player 2, even though I duplicated it or duplicated player 1, you'll see that player 2 has move pedal, but it does not create another script. It is still referring to the same script we created earlier. So if I select move pedal, it is that same move pedal. There isn't a different one. So both player 1 and player 2 are referring to this same script. And that is why we needed to add a variable in to differentiate between moving player 1 versus moving player 2. So let's see how we move player 2. So we have our if in already, which checks for that variable if it's player 1 or player 2. Now we need to add a logic in. So a better way to do this, I'm going to do this in an easy way, and this is really not good practice, but because this is meant to be quite a beginner example, I'm just going to do it this way, and that is grabbing this and duplicating it. Control D. I'm going to drag this down, and I need to hook up faults to this new one. And instead of vertical, we are going to use vertical 2. And now this is where we need to get back to our input manager, which I've closed. Edit, project settings. Input manager, we can come here to vertical, right click and duplicate array element. You will see created vertical again. I'm going to call this vertical 2. And here we can add negative, we want the down button, positive, we want up, and we can remove S and W so we don't have any conflict between vertical and vertical 2. They are completely different controllers here. Vertical will now go and use S and W for moving player 1 up and down, and vertical 2 is using down and up arrows for controlling player 2, which we are going to sort out in a bit. So vertical 2, we are using move speed, so move speed will be the same for player 1 and player 2, so we'll use the same variable. So instead of having this reference twice, what we can do is just delete this one and connect this to B on the lower bit, which is dealing with player 2. And in this case, it will use vertical 2 to decide whether to move up and down. And let's see, so player 2, go back to inspector, and we are going to deselect is player 1. And because this is just a 2-player game, it implies that this is player 2. Okay, press play, and now my up and down arrows should work for moving the second pedal up and down. Okay, it's a bit out of view there. I'm going to move it a bit to the left. Okay, my up and down arrows, you cannot see what I'm doing, but my up and down arrows are moving the pedal on the right, which is player 2, and my W and S arrows are moving player 1 on the left. Okay, now let's see how we do this in C#. Let's go back to project, assets, scenes, right click, create new scene. We are going to call this C# scene. Net, just saving just in case, and let's see. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cheat a little bit, speed things up. I'm going back to my visual scripting scene, and I'm just going to copy my camera, player 1 and player 2. So I don't have to waste time repositioning things. Move my main camera there, rename this to main camera. Let's take this main camera. I don't need scene variables here. Okay, then with player 1 and player 2 selected, I can remove the script machines. Remove component, and I can remove variables, because those variables are specific to visual scripting. C# has its own variables, which we will keep in our C# files. And if I press play here, okay, WS not working, up and down arrows not working, good. And let's go and create a C# script. I'm going to right click, create, whoops, let's delete that. Okay, right click, create folder. Scripts. Create C# script, and let's call this pedal. I went and put 2 L's in. Let's open that up. When you rename a script like that, you'll see that it doesn't rename your C# file. This public class and whatever the name is needs to be the same as the name of the file. So I need to remove one of the L's here as well, or it will not work. I'm getting rid of start. And we just have update. So inside update, remember between these curly brackets, we need to put our code. And let's think about this. So we need to firstly create a variable. So the variable we'll create after this first curly bracket, just after your public class declaration. Enter, and I'm going to call this public float is player 1. Why float? It should be bool. So in C# it's just bool, not boolean. Okay, so it's shortened down. If is player 1. This is how you do if in C#. If and else. So remember, this is not meant to be an in-depth walkthrough or deep dive into learning C#. This is meant to just give you guys, if you guys are new to Unity and you're not sure which path to choose, C# or visual scripting, this is just meant to kind of point you in the right direction. So you can look at this and say, oh, okay, I want to go the C# route, or okay, I want to go the visual scripting route, or maybe both. Okay, so if it's true, it will execute whatever code I put in between these first set of brackets for the if. And if it's not true, if it's false, it will execute whatever code I put in over here. So player 1, let's do this. We need to translate. And we do that by just grabbing transform, which is available on any mono behavior, which is basically Anytime you create a C# script through Unity, it will be a mono behavior. Transform.translate and 3 values, X, Y, and Z. So I need to change this middle value, which is my Y, and what do I supply there? I need to give it I need to get the input axis value, right, for vertical. So I'm going to create a variable float move amount equals input.getAxis, and here we need to open brackets, double quotes, and semicolon at the end. Move amount, and we are getting vertical, and for Y we are setting move amount. Good. Now this should work for player 1. Let's go back to Unity, select player 1, and where's our script? We need to put move pedal on this. We are going to set this as player 1, select player 2, we are putting move pedal on that, and that's not selected because player 1 is not selected. So player 1 should work if I press my W and S keys. Yep, and it works, and it's very sensitive. So we need to add a move speed in, and we do that public float move speed. As soon as we add that in, it will appear in Unity. So compile. Okay, move speed, we are going to set it to 0. What did I make it? 0.2, I think. And we'll set it on player 2 as well. So you can set these independently. For better or worse. Oh, there's a C#. Cool. Move amount. Now we need to take move amount and multiply it by move speed. So to do that, we say move speed. We are going to update it with the existing move speed multiplied by move amount, sorry about that, is equal to the existing move amount multiplied by our move speed. Now that will take your value. If your value is 1, which it will be most of the time, it will multiply by 0.2 and give you a move amount of 0.2 and slow it down so we have more control over moving that pedal around. So if I press play now, moving W and S, cool. That still feels quite sensitive. What did I miss? That looks fine. I'm going to decrease that to 0.1. Decrease to 0.01, see what makes a difference. Okay, yeah, that move speed is definitely working. Just needed to take it down quite a bit there, so let's make that 0.05. The same on player 2, 0.05. Save. Let's sort out the second part, which is for player 2. Again, we could have done this a bit differently in terms of reusing code, but I'm just going to duplicate this for now. There's a much better way to do this, but I do not want to confuse you guys who are complete beginners. And we have our input set up already, which is vertical 2, which we did earlier. And that's pretty much all we need to do. And that should now work for player 2. If I press my up and down arrows, so let's see. Up and down arrows, great, it's moving my player 2. And W and S is moving player 1. So, what wins? Let's go back to our bold scripts. Visual scripting, sorry. It's changed. Let's have a look at this. Okay, so for me this looks quite cumbersome. Mind you, there's a better way to do this, but even so, that shouldn't matter all that much. So with all these things connecting all over the place, it can be very hard to just see what's happening. So you have to be quite careful with the way you manage your visual scripts and plan it and have multiple scripts referencing each other. You can't just have everything all in one place like this. But this is okay for now. This is actually not that bad, but even still, even this being a small simple movement script, this is still quite complicated. And if you remember, when I had to add in the variable for move speed, I had to disconnect things all over the place and reconnect. And when we came to C#, doing something similar, adding that move speed in was just a matter of adding this one line in and everything worked fine. This is a lot more compact and it's a lot easier to see what's going on. Of course, you guys might feel differently because you are completely new to this, but if you are used to C#, this is like so straightforward. And trust me, you get used to this so quickly. Definitely not something to be afraid of. So this, I will give this to C#. Definitely a win for C# for creating our movement script. Okay, next video we'll get the ball in, get that moving around, and add in our perimeter walls so that the ball doesn't go flying off into space. Until then, enjoy and please try this by yourselves. Cheers.